Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Welcome everybody to Rising Up with Jeryl. I am your host, Jeryl, and it is my great pleasure to have with me tonight Deb Goldberg. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Jeryl. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited. I have been so excited about this all day long. And I'm going to go ahead. If number one, if everyone would share this out, please. I'm going to go ahead and read Deb's bio. And I know she's going to be sharing it out as well right now. And then we will get this party started here on this beautiful Saturday evening. Deb Goldberg, oh my gosh, Deb is a retired therapist who practiced for 18 years providing treatment for mental health and substance abuse. She's worked in a variety of settings and now she's in private practice as a spiritual teacher. She was spiritually awakened by Jesus and taught God's universal divine love and wisdom. These conversations transformed her life and set her on a course of self-discovery through divine introspection with God. Debbie believes that you cannot heal or even understand your true identity without the love and the truth that comes from a one-on-one intimate relationship with God. This ultimately leads you to your divine calling. Debbie is also a video podcast host on Angel Heart Radio and on Enlightened World Network. She's also involved with the programming for Enlightened World Network and participates in several live video broadcasts. Debbie is helping others understand the journey of divine self-discovery and wisdom. She brings the divine knowledge and experience of her own awakening into her work to inspire healing, love, joy, purpose, and creativity to each of us as we work through our own journey home. Wow. I tell you what, Deb, when I read your bio, and I have to admit, I started reading Deb, and what I didn't say in there is Deb is a published author. She has this trilogy of books, and I have this first one, Are You Ready to Listen, God? I have this on my Kindle. I'm sorry, it's probably kind of not showing up very well. And she has the 3 books above her, and it's a trilogy. And the first book talks about her awakening, and the second and third books really dive deep about how she uses different techniques to heal herself and to transform her reality. So without further ado, now, Deb, we laughed about this ahead of time, but I have to say this again. When I was reading your book, the first question that came to my mind is, how does a little Jewish girl from Brooklyn, New York, have Jesus come to her and be a part of her awakening? I have to tell you, I am mesmerized. Will you share?
Oh my goodness, it's such a great question because I'll tell you what, it took me a long time to understand why. I asked myself the same questions. I didn't know, there was certain things going on in my life when this happened. And, I had always wanted to have my own private practice. I was a therapist for 18 years, and my goal was to have a private practice, and I finally achieved that. And so after a few years into it, I started thinking to myself, I achieved my goal that I set. Is this what is the rest of my life going to look like? Because am I going to be seeing people just in my office every day? And so my mind started to expand in the sense that, okay, I reached the goals that I set. What happens now? But at the same time, I was going through conflict with my son and his wife. And I was very upset about having conflict with them because I didn't want to have conflict with people that I love. You want to get along and you want everything to go really well. And so I started digging deeper into reading a little bit. And I came upon Dr. Margaret Paul, who has a technique called inner bonding. And I started reading about her and what she does. And I thought, I'm going to go to her workshop. And I had never gone to a workshop before for myself, for personal development. I've always gone to workshops for CEU credits for my license, from therapy. So this was embarking on a whole new thing for me. And while we were in the workshop, she said, I'm going to do a meditation to help you find your spiritual guides. And I was like, okay. I had never meditated before. I was not part of the spiritual community. I was not religious. What I knew about Jesus is just what I heard through hearsay about Christianity. I've never read the Bible, and I was not indoctrinated into Judaism either. I was what you would call a cultural Jew. So we celebrate holidays and traditions and like that, but I didn't really go to temple. I didn't have a bat mitzvah. There was no indoctrination into it. So when Margaret said, okay, we're going to meditate and you're going to meet your spiritual guide, and I was there to understand how I was creating my own pain. That is the source of the how she does her work, is that you are creating your own pain. And I thought, well, I need to figure this out. How am I creating pain for myself? And so I was in the meditation, and that was hers that she read. And all of a sudden, my mind turns into a movie. And it just takes over. And she said, so, go to your happy place. And mine was by the pool. And so I was sitting by the pool, and here comes this man. And all of a sudden, this man appears at the pool with me. And this was not something I was doing. It just took over my mind. And I thought, okay, this guy's wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans, and he's got dark hair down here, and his skin color was a little darker. And I'm like, who is this person? I don't know who you are, but he felt so good. Like the energy, I had never, ever felt anything like that before in my whole life. And it just felt peaceful and joyful. And so we just kept sitting there. And as Margaret kept reading the meditation, all of a sudden, I am now in a raft in the pool.
Wow.
And I'm just there. And then maybe 3 of my younger selves show up in my arms, laying in this raft with me. Yeah. And this man got in the pool with me, and he said, he took my arms and he put them all around my other selves, which I would call my wounded parts of myself. Mm-hmm. And I realized at that moment that I needed to heal myself. It was so powerful. And at the same time, I didn't understand anything that was happening, because I had no longer control over my mind. Like, I wasn't using my imagination to make this movie happen. It just started. And so when I came out of the meditation, I was like, well, this man showed up, and I started telling people about it, and they said, well, that sounds like Jesus. And I'm like, why would Jesus come to me? Like, what do you mean? I don't know. He's wearing a t-shirt, a white t-shirt and blue jeans, and I really had no reference of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And he had a blanket with him at the side of the pool. And it looked like, I thought it was like an Aztec kind of looking blanket. And it was blue and white. And I was at a retreat center that sold blankets sort of like that. And I went in the store there and I said, I don't know why, I just feel like I need to purchase this blanket that looks just like what I saw in my meditation. So I came home to my husband and I tell him what happened. And he said, that sounds like Jesus, Deb. And he's Catholic, right?
Okay.
I'm not really practicing. So he has a lot of religious history. And he said, that sounds like Jesus. And I'm baffled. Like, I'm like, how do I relate to this? Why did Jesus come to me? And I didn't understand what the whole thing was, with the blanket. And Brian told me it was not a blanket, it was a prayer shawl. It was a Jewish prayer shawl.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. He said, well, maybe that was a bridge through your Judaism because Jesus was Jewish.
Right.
And maybe that was a bridge, like this prayer shawl was something for you to look at, that he's part of your ancestries and being Jewish. And so I was like, okay, but I did not want to say he was Jesus Christ, but I didn't know of anything else other than Jesus Christ, because
Right.
that's what I've seen out in society, right?
Yeah.
And within myself, my inner child was telling me it's Jesus. She said, she just kept telling me, this is Jesus. And I'm like, how can it be Jesus? Like, what is going on with me?
Yeah.
And it took me a couple of years
Wow.
to say, how do I conceptualize this? And what happened from there, we hadn't been talking during my meditation, but when I went home, I meditated every day, and I would sit with him, and it felt so good. And when I went back to my practice, I said, oh my God, I'm going to do this meditation with everybody, because it was so amazing. And I wanted everybody else to have this feeling inside of knowing what it is to be connected to divine love. So I started doing that. And probably about 2 weeks into that, after I went home, I was thinking, this is really awesome, but why don't we talk to each other? And I just heard in my mind, just say hello. And I said, okay. And I said, hi. And he said, hi. And then the conversations just started and was amazing. And, yeah.
See, and so that is so amazing, because I think what happens, and we talked about this earlier, there's so many people that are waking up now. There are so many people that woke up before, but you don't just wake up and then boom, everything is completely changed. You're healed, you're this, and you move forward and la di da di da. It is a process. In fact, it's just kind of like you're going to somebody's house, you open the door and say hello, and everything happens after that. And so this what I kind of want to dive deep about tonight is how does that make you feel? What happens, because everyone has a different experience, but some people hear voices, and hear the voice. Some people, like you said, you had like a knowingness at one point, you heard voices at another point. So it can come in a multitude of ways. But I also have to ask this quick little question. Your husband, of course, is Catholic, so this probably wasn't a big deal to him. But what about your Jewish friends? When you started talking, because here's the thing, when I met you, and I want people to understand this, there is oftentimes, if I hear somebody talking about Jesus or God or whatever, I kind of think, oh my God, it's going to go down this organized religion path. Okay. I really want to clear that up right up front with everybody. This is not about organized religion. This is about connecting to divine source, to spirit, to spirituality, and connecting to that which is the Jesus within you, if you will, divine source which is within you. It has nothing to do with organized religion. Let's just clear that out of the way. So, but your family, even though you weren't like Orthodox Jewish or whatever, and that, but there had to be a bit of wow, what's going on with Deb? She's talking to Jesus now, okay? So what was that like? Because I know a lot of our viewers have family that just, and it's not that extreme where probably they're Jewish and talking to Jesus, but that their families are going, what's going on with them? They talk to fairies, they talk to elementals, they're talking to archangels, they're talking to ascended masters. How did your family handle this? I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm. Well, my husband, even though he believed that what I was seeing and interacting with is Jesus, he thought like I went off the bend. Like,
Okay.
he did not understand what was happening as much as I didn't understand what was happening, because I didn't know what waking up was. I had no idea about higher consciousness. I was asleep like till 56 years old, until I was woke up. So it was all like, it was very abrupt. It was like, here it is. There is more. And I'm going to show it to you right now. So he did not understand what was going on. And I really didn't say anything to my family until the books came, because they were dictated by Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted, and what these books were actually my healing. Was talking about my healing, and I had a lot of trauma from my childhood involving my parents. So I put all of that in the books.
Yeah.
And so I figured I need to tell them, I want to tell my mother, this is the books, and this is what I'm writing, and I didn't want somebody else to tell her,
Right.
or my sister, and because my dad's passed on, which I've done lots of healing with him from the other side,
Right.
and so my mom was like, whatever makes you happy. She didn't understand, but it was like, if this is what makes you happy, okay. And it was just left like that. I've heard snickers from other family members when I was leaving dinner, like a family dinner one night. I heard somebody whisper, oh, should we say goodbye to God?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah. So, and it was really quite a while before my husband, he didn't understand what was happening either. And then when Jesus dictated the books to me, he said, I said I was going to type them, because he had me handwrite them. Okay. And I said, I'll type them. And he said, no, I want Brian to type them. And I'm like,
really?
Yeah. And I was like, well, I don't know if he's going to like that, because, I'm a better typer and he's not probably going to want to do this. He said, I want Brian to type these. And Brian did. And it was almost like we need to get this information into Brian, because there was no other way it was going to happen. And so if he typed it, he was at least understanding what was going on with me and what I was telling everybody. And so yeah, and so it's been a spiritual growth for him. And I just seen the last year of God really working in him in his own way. Has nothing to do with the same way I have woke up. But yeah, it was powerful.
That's so important that we get on board. Our families get on board with us as best they can in their own way. I have my husband is so supportive. You've met Sam, of everything I do. He doesn't necessarily understand. He's the most spiritual man in his own way. But I couldn't do what I do if he didn't believe in my mission. He may not understand it, but he believes in me enough to believe that I'm going on my path the way I should. And he sees his support of me as his legacy as well, because I couldn't do this without him. And it's the same way with you and Brian. Even if his spirituality comes, each person has to have it in the way that is right for them. And I'm glad that you were able to tell us about that, because I think a lot of people may have that experience where maybe their spouse or partner don't really understand what you're going through. And
it creates a lot of conflict, and it did for us. And I just kept having faith in God and saying, I need you to work in Brian's heart. I need you to, I would say to my higher self, I need you to take over this relationship because I obviously don't know what I'm doing. And I need help because I want this to work. And, you know, it's so easy. And a lot of the growth that I've had is in relationships, in you know, marriage or family. And so, you know, I teach a lot about relationships. So it was almost like fertile ground for me of understanding what a marriage is all about from a different perspective. But I just kept saying, I need your help in this because what I'm doing is not helping. I need you to take over. And a lot of it was me learning how to be stronger and standing up for what I believe, which I didn't know how to do before. And so it was amazing growth and being able to see him in a different way than the way that we normally look at relationships and other people in our life.
you know, and I want to get back to the divine relationships and your relationship with yourself. But one of the things that I think was really interesting was that in the beginning, you said there was quite a struggle, an internal struggle and an egoic struggle, where you described in your first book about kind of talking, sassing back to God. And I have God bumps. I call them God bumps from head to toe. Like, you were just sassing back to God, like, okay, you know, I'm all this in a bag of chips. And, you know, and then it was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Oh my gosh. So what was that like? And talk to me about that a little bit, please. That was just it. It was like I was shocked, and yet my heart was just like expanded all at the same time by the quick transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I really didn't understand about the ego in the way that we look at it for higher consciousness, and I was just starting to learn about that. And so I'm in bed, and I was sick for a week, and I was trying to increase my ability to connect. I had already been talking to Jesus and my higher self, and you know, I wanted more. I wanted to know what my purpose was, and I'm kind of like begging and pleading, God, please tell me what my purpose is. And it was so strange. It was like out of like auditorily in my ear. It was like, and all of a sudden I heard, are you ready to listen? And I was like, oh my God, that's God. Like, you know, when you hear God talk to you,
Yeah,
you just know it. And I was like, oh, he's so right, because I had shut down my ears my whole life. I didn't want to hear what anybody else had to say to me because of my trauma background. And here he was, and I was like, yeah, yes, I am ready to listen. And so he said, I want you to write down everything that I tell you. And all of a sudden my inner child came up and dictated this beautiful children's story to me. And so I wrote out everything I heard. I haven't published it yet, but I wrote it down, and I was like, wow. And all of a sudden this feeling came over me, and I said, so that's my purpose? This silly little children's book? And I was like, what was that? Where did that come from? Like, what was that? Like, I got a front row seat to what the ego is.
Yeah.
And he's, you know, so he was talking to me, and I was like, I'm sorry, God. He goes, I understand. I know what it is. And so he started talking to me, and he started calling me the sweetest little girl in the world. And it was it was his way of just loving me. And he, the love that comes when you are in that conversation with God, you wouldn't believe the beautiful things that are said to you. And so when I heard that, and I was like, oh my God, here comes the ego again. And what comes out of my mouth is, I bet you say that to all the girls.
Oh my
I
God.
bet you say that to all the girls, God. Like,
Oh,
right, like I'm going to believe you. I threw myself on the floor. I was like, I couldn't believe that came out of my mouth. And I was shocked. And I was appalled at myself and felt so much shame about where did that come from and what is it? And then I started realizing this is the ego. And well, nice to meet you, ego. I see what this is. And of course, God's forgiving, and He's like, "Don't worry about it."
but that's so. I mean, I can totally understand that because there have been moments in my life that I've done everything by the book. I've done all these things. And then all of a sudden I have this thing, epiphany, or I don't get what I want. And then that ego comes up and it's like, I am sick of this. I am so tired of doing everything you want me to do. And yet you're not giving me what I want, and it's like, like that little child within. So yeah, I totally get it. So I loved it when I read that because it was like, oh, thank you, Deb. Thank you for just being so real and so honest and so vulnerable, because I think each and every one of us, we all have our egos, we all have our dark sides, we all have our inner struggles. And the thing that I'm finding what I think this time has brought us is the time to dive deep. And so I know for myself, I'm really getting to uncover facets of my ego and some of those dark corners that I previously thought I had mastered, of course, and they're up in my face again. And it's like, okay, I thought we took care of this a couple of years back or 6 months ago or a year ago. And there it is popping up. And I believe it's another layer. So what you really describe in your books are real ways to deal with those aspects of ourselves, because each and every one of us, we chose to come here. And I want to get to this next, is the whole spiritual framework, soul contract idea. And but I do want to, before someone did ask in our viewers asked about the meditation that you went on, that you initially had your first visit with Jesus. Is that taught in one of your books, or is that something that where can they find? And we can go into this later, but I didn't want to, it was here at the beginning of the show, and I didn't want to get too far in and forget about it, because I want to be able to let them know that they can find, oh, okay, do I have to give up me to be loved by God? Wow.
Yes, and it's by Dr. Margaret Paul.
Okay.
And this, I have in my books, I have pointed to this book and the chapter where they can find this this meditation. It's so powerful,
Okay.
and I love it, and it really helps you find your connect with your spiritual guide, and I can't say enough about it.
Okay.
And I used it with all my clients. I used it with about 200 clients.
Wow.
And probably 3 clients out of the 200 were not able to connect. I thought that was
that's a phenomenal rate.
Yeah. And none of them were really interested in really connecting spiritually. I just said, hey, let's try this and see what happens.
Yeah. So, okay. So I don't know which way we want to go first. Whether we want to talk about soul contracts or spiritual framework, or how do we move forward in a new way? What comes first? The chicken or the egg?
I think it's all happening at the same
I
time.
know, isn't it though? It's really tough. So, well, let's talk first about what you term spiritual framework. And what does that mean to you? And I think that's a good basis to start with so that we can really start to understand what kind of ground zero is and then move forward from there.
Mm-hmm. So I was so inquisitive that all I kept doing is asking questions. Like, how does this happen? How did we get here? What are we doing here? How does this occur? How does the whole thing work? Like, let me in on the secret, like everybody does. and and so I asked a gazillion questions. And what Jesus gave me was what I call them myths, because truly you cannot understand infinite intelligence. You can't. It's just too expansive. And so what we get are myths. They're ways of understanding how we might have got here. What is this all about? Why are we here? What are we supposed to do here? And so the myth that I was given is that, and the myth actually grows with the books into actually more truths. So the third book, there's more of going off of that particular myth. It's sort of like learning your ABCs. You have to learn each letter, like we don't go from A to Z. We learn all the in between. And so we start out with a myth that you can digest when you wake up. And as you know, as in the spiritual world, there's so many different myths about how we got here. For each person, they're going to have their own truth. And so there's a gazillion of them. And so what I was told is that, that we incarnate, that God wants us to experience, have a fun experience. And so he has created, and I call God he, even though I know it's energy, because that is the way I relate to him. He shows up. I see him as male. And so that's another part of our brain needs to have symbols or something tangible to hold on to understand what divine love is. And so for me, it showed up as, it shows up in imagery. So I get to see people. And so God shows up as a man. And so God wants us to have this experience, and Earth is a stage. It's an illusion. It is, you want to call it a hologram, a projection, whatever works for you to help you understand that. And that we're all here. We've all been given a story. It's our storyline. And we are here, and all the other people are other actors helping us work our story out. And so we're each playing a role in each other's lives, and that within the illusion. And so you go from a beginning story to an awakening story. Mm-hmm. That once you wake up, your whole story starts to shift and change. It's like your whole life are different chapters in a book, and that they're always guided, and that you have divine love always inside of you that is helping you play out your story.
Okay.
So this was the framework that I was given, but nobody remembers that they're playing a role in Theater Earth. We've all forgotten it on purpose, and that and that your spirit never gets hurt. You never get hurt, because this is an illusion. So even though we look at what happens on Earth here, and it looks like terrible things happen, and I've experienced terrible things like other people have. And so as you go along in your growth, your consciousness keeps expanding. and you start understanding more and more and more. And the more time you spend in conversation, because divine love, which I call God, only wants to have a relationship with you and only wants you to be happy. That is it. And know that you're co-creating together, that nothing's wrong. You have developed this false self because of ego consciousness, and the whole journey is unpeeling that, is understanding that you are divine nature, and that's all that you are.
Awesome.
And yeah, and that, so you're really awakening to yourself as you are going through consciousness. You're not learning something new, you're reawakening to your true nature, to who you truly are that you forgot.
So when you talk about, and I love this, so when you talk about having a divine relationship with yourself, let's say, and then we talk about there's the ego self. So basically what you're describing in your books is how to navigate, release, transform that egoic structure so that we can get to who we truly are, which is our divine self, which is really kind of the whole point of being here on earth. Otherwise, we'd be somewhere else. We'd be either on another planet, in another dimension, or whatever. This is what we're supposed to be doing here, correct? Is kind of, it's like, all right, we're going to put you at this maze, and this is the beginning. Now, here's on the other side, you're going to find who you really are as you go through it. And it's kind of like what we're going through now. So let's talk a bit about having a relationship with our divine self, what that looks like, and how do we get there? Now, that's just a short little question, huh?
Well, the answer that I've learned to all of this is that you are you are unfolding because God is unfolding inside of you, meaning that you are really not in control of your unfolding. Even though we're doing all of this work and we're trying to figure things out and we're reading things and we're practicing spiritual stuff, it is really done by God because you are an expression. You are God's essence.
Right.
You are creation. You have been created to appear as if you're an individual, just like the trees are outside. It is all creation, and there's only one nature, and it's God. It's divine love. So, when you're doing this, you think that you are in charge of your transformation, and you are not. You are not at all in charge of your transformation, but because the veil of unconsciousness, the ego consciousness is so, it's so part of this experience that we actually think that we're doing it, that we're in charge. I'm transforming myself. We're not. It is being done for us. I get told this over and over and over again. That you have a purpose in life, you have a calling, and the unfolding happens as it's supposed to in divine time. Divine love is making all of this happen, and it will come to you when it's supposed to come to you. Because I have tried to rush this process, I have tried to transform myself, and all it does is create immense frustration inside of me when I feel like I'm someplace where I should be someplace else than where I am at in my transformation.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think if there was a common frustration, good word for it, that we have as a collective, it would be that. And it's so prevalent in the spiritual community. It has been probably my biggest thing, and you've gotten to know me playing transformation games and different things over time, that we get so frustrated because we think our ego thinks we should be way further along than we are, or that we're missing the boat, or we're not. What is my purpose? How do we how do we really just relax and go with it and get some peace of mind? Because for me, that has been one of the greatest challenges on my journey.
Mm-hmm.
What would you speak to that?
It is for all of us. It is really, you know, if the goal is to have a relationship with self, which is what we call God, because everybody says I am, right?
Right.
Um, and if the goal is to trust that if you are God in motion, then God's in control. And how do I trust and have faith that where that motion's taking me, or the things that are happening in my life are the way that they're supposed to be, rather than looking at things as wrong or right or good or bad. So the whole journey is developing a very deep, intimate relationship with divine love, knowing that it is caring for you, protecting you, that you are safe at all times. You are an eternal being. You are loved beyond anything you can imagine. And you're getting to have a physical experience that really isn't real. And how do you trust the process that it's going to be okay whatever happens? And it's letting go. It's letting go. It's learning grace for yourself, of having to not want to push it, because there's always this ego process going on, which is a whole nother thing, because that's an illusion too, that there's ego consciousness is an illusion. So, I've gone through so many different stages, and that's why I say my awakening is so abrupt, because I've been given like okay, here you go, Deb, this this is the way it is. and we're going to help you do it every step of the way. So every day I am talking to God, Jesus, angels are part of that, but my main source is really learning about myself. So it is stripping away all the ego processes, the beliefs about myself, even though there's ego stuff still going on.
Sure.
That it is stripping away the faulty beliefs. It is stripping away how I see myself. Every opportunity that we have in life is an opportunity to experience ourselves in our fullness of this particular experience with ego, with divine, and all these aspects of ourself that are always pulling on us all the time. So, when I started out and I learned about my higher self and I met my higher self, my future selves, I thought they were something other than me, like some other spiritual, my soul. Like I was looking at my spirit, and then through the process, I hear, no, you are the higher self. There is no separation. There is no separation of anything. And so you are the higher self. Jesus says, I am you. You are me. God says, I am you. And when you hear that, when you're saying I am God is one thing, but what God says to you, I am you, it takes on a whole nother dimension of understanding. And so there is absolutely no separation of consciousness. So I look at divine love as a sea of consciousness. It is infinite. It is eternal love. It is infinite intelligence. It's infinite creativity. It's imagination. And so everything you see is you. Everything. You can't separate anything.
And so, and that's what I love about this message, because this has been my belief system for a long time. The biggest illusion that I think we live with is that we're all separate, because we have these separate bodies, and we think that, or thought that everything is in us. It's all right here. It doesn't go outside. But we're not separate. We are all, each and every one of us, God. We are all divine. And so it takes on a whole new meaning. For me, anyway, what I see in you is within me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What and so we're all part of one, and I'm hoping that one of the things that we do take away from this, even if it's on a very superficial level through this time, is that we're all connected. Even if it's just for some people that we're just connected because we're going through the same experience globally for the very first time, but that eventually they'll see that this connection is not just on that superficial level of we're all experiencing an event at the same time, but that we are all one. And that my hope is that compassion and faith and trust and all of those things really come to the forefront from this. So I know we're getting short on time, but I think part of that is seeing the divine in ourselves and seeing the divine in others as being the same, and trust. Would you speak to that just a little bit about trust and faith and compassion and forgiveness, and all of those things are kind of all tied up together, are they not, maybe in these divine relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about, you know, a lot of my struggle was with this incarnation. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't like it. And this is part of ego stuff. And I had this out with Jesus and God about, I just don't find it funny because I saw so much tragedy. I live tragedy, and I don't understand. And it's probably took me a year and a half to really move out of a place of feeling like a puppet. I went through all of these things because when the ego realizes it's not real, it's not a self, there's this lashback of it. And so I had to go through this. I didn't understand what this incarnation was. I just looked around outside and knew what I experienced and said, this is nuts. Who would want to do this? And you're telling me it's not real. What am I here doing this for? Just take me home. Just take me home. I'm glad I don't want to play anymore. So part of the spiritual framework is also understanding what the incarnation is really about. And the more time you spend in conversation with divine love, you get to understand this of what it is, and to really appreciate that, you know, Jesus keeps telling me it's not hard. I make it hard, that it's not hard, but I all the things that go on within myself, of understanding the incarnation, is that it feels hard. It feels like a lot of work. It feels heavy sometimes. It feels like I don't have control over, I'm like in battle with ego. It's almost like the higher self and the ego is in a battle together, against each other. And that's going on all the time. And so it feels terrible. Then you get down on yourself and get frustrated. And so what I learned is what my relationship is with frustration. So that was part of experiencing myself, of what happens when things are difficult, or I feel like I'm not in control, and that there's a battle. And one of the things I learned is I had no idea what love was. None. Zippo. I didn't feel it growing up. I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to love other people. And that was all taught to me by God and Jesus and some specific spiritual beings that have worked on me receiving my own love. And then it's learning how to have compassion for yourself and forgiveness, and
Deb,
Great.
how do we do that? I want, before we leave here today, I want our viewers to have some takeaway, because I think each and every one of us, and I love what you're saying, because I think everyone is feeling to one degree or another all those things. And I love that you put this journey in those 3 books, because this is the struggle right now for everyone, is that, okay, I've walked this path, or I'm just waking up, wherever you're at on your path.
Mhm.
I accept it. It doesn't feel good a lot of the times. It feels really good at other times. How, what is that golden key? What is one thing? Because I know a lot of people are really, really, really having a difficult time because they don't feel they have any control in these circumstances. How do we start to, when we feel like that, when we are caught in the muck and mire, or the mud, if you will, of that pain and that, and you're so, so, so viscerally aware of every stage of it and still go through it at times? What is something that you could say to us that we could hold on to, or something that would kind of help us to lift ourselves up enough to move out of that, to give people hope? And because sometimes it just feels like it's raining all the time right now, and we all want to process, but oh my gosh, does it get, yeah, what would you, yeah.
It's a great question, and everything that I learned came from inside of me. All my nurturing came from inside of me. The teaching came from inside of me. On those moments, I think for, I don't know how long it was, when I first woke up, I spent my curled up in God and Jesus's lap, sleeping at night. I would imagine myself sleeping. My head was in God's lap and my feet were in Jesus's, and they were talking to me and talking to me and helping me understand, because everything wanted to come up at once. Everything that needed to be, processed, that I shoved down, all came up at once. And I wasn't used to feeling emotions. I had been numb for 56 years. And so here they all came up at one time, and it was horrible. And I was like a little child. I was like a 5-year-old in their lap saying, hold me, help me, help me understand. And so this is where I had to go inside. I had to go inside, and I'll still do it now. If I have to crawl up in God's lap, I'll do it. And because that's what I'm feeling I need at the moment. I need the nurturing, and he's always there to give it to me. Or that he just pops up on the side of my bed at night, or Jesus, or John the Baptist. It just happens. Now, luckily, as I started to recognize that there was some people in my life that I could learn to trust, that could nurture me also, learn how to help me with that. But Margaret's work of inner bonding really helped, because I started using a teddy bear. And I started to hold this teddy bear when I was having those moments, knowing that there was a little child inside of me that was hurting and asking for love. And I just didn't know how to give that to myself. And so I practiced that, and Jesus practiced it with me. Like every time I went and visited one of my inner children, and I had a whole softball team of them that needed to be healed. They went with me. We talked about what was going on, why them were feeling that way. And it was all just junk from the past, just keep playing over and over and over again. But the whole journey is learning how to love yourself and accept your full self. I've had 3 lessons this last 3 days, and the first one was on grace, then it was letting go and the power of love. It is gracefully letting go through the power of love. And that is what we're doing to ourselves through this incarnation, is gracefully accepting, allowing the whole full spectrum of what we're going through with love, and bringing more love and more love and more love into yourself. And the more you do that, the more it just gets spread outside of yourself. It's really beautiful.
I really love that. And I think, I think I'm loving this message, because I think that self-love, there's been a lot of talk during this time about self-love, because, we've all been taught that to put ourselves first, to love ourselves is egoic or prideful or boastful or whatever, and that you should give to others first and take care of everyone else. And I think what you're saying is, and at least what I believe is that we need to put ourselves first. We need to love ourselves. We need to love, and what you pointed out, the inner child. There are so many aspects of us as we become adults that we start to ignore, and we continue to, that we just ignore. And that's a very real part of ourselves that needs to be addressed. And I think that's a whole nother show that I would love to have you come back and talk about. Is there any last words? It's time for us to start wrapping up, and I want people to know how to get a hold of you. You're doing so many shows, and you have so much more to give. I'm just so bummed that we're out of time. It just went by so fast, but you'll come back. You promised, right?
I promise.
And, so what would be one last thing you would like to leave everyone with before we give them the information on how to get a hold of you?
Mm-hmm. Everything that you need to know and need to be taught is inside of you. And that your wisdom, your connection, there's a direct path to divine love, because that's all that you are. And it is waiting for you to keep going inside and going inside and going inside, and pushing through that inertia from the ego that doesn't want you to do that, and knowing the connection inside of you is more powerful than anything you could have experienced here on earth. That the love that lives inside of you, and the light, is magnificent, that you are magnificent, and you're only going to find it by going inside and really embrace your journey and not judge it. And it just is what it is, and it's powerful. So that is my send off, is that you are being loved through this whole thing every moment. There's not a second that goes by that you're not loved through this. And the help and the support that is given to you is amazing. And there's people out around you that are there to help you too. But nothing is the same as going in and being taught who you are from within, and having your own intimate relationship with divine love, and knowing that that's all you are.
Oh, this has been so wonderful. Thank you, Deb. How can people get a hold of you? Please tell us how to get a hold of you.
Sure, I have a website, and it's Debbie N. Goldberg. And you can also, I have a YouTube station. You can look at some of my videos on there. I do a lot of work with Enlightened World Network, which is just so awesome. You have to go to Facebook, Enlightened World Network, Enlightened World Online, and see all the amazing stuff that we do there. And I'm on Facebook also, so under Debbie N. Goldberg. So you can message me and get through that way. And hopefully I'll be offering some master classes in June.
That's exciting.
And learning how to balance your own energy, which I've learned from inside.
Wonderful. And you also have a weekly show every Wednesday night at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And that is called Divine Relationship Recovery.
Yes, and that is about your relationship with yourself, with divine love, and with other people. So it's a different topic each week. And
Awesome.
then Thursdays I'm on Angel Heart Radio, and I interview guests and discuss topics.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much again, Deb. And I really do hope you'll come back because we have so much more to talk about. I seriously only got through the first chapter of your book, pretty much. Okay. So, I mean, there is so much more. I would like to thank everybody who joined us here tonight. You know, we have such a loyal group of what listeners and viewers. And I want to tell you all, I love each and every one of you. They follow Enlightened World Network, and I am just so amazed. And please do check out EWN, Enlightened Living, and also Enlightened World Network. The programming, it would take me another 15 minutes just to talk about all the programming. So please go on. Every day it's listed what's on. And next week, please join me. I have another Debbie, but this is Debbie Dem from Sedona, Arizona. She wrote this book. It's like the third or fourth. It's My Spiritual Journey, How Learning Reiki Changed My Life. And we're going to talk about her book a little bit, but we're also going to talk about the meaning of aloha and also some of the lost aspects of Ho'oponopono. She studied with the great or however many greats granddaughter of the person, the Hawaiian, who actually brought forth Ho'oponopono. And so she's going to come on and talk about that and the meaning of aloha. So please join us next Saturday night at 8 p.m. I hope you have a blessed rest of your weekend and have a great week next week. And we will see you back here on Enlightened World Network tomorrow morning, Terry, Angel, and I with Coffee and Conversation. So see y'all later. Have a blessed week and bye-bye, everybody.